humidity greets me first, a warm and heavy blanket that smells faintly of frangipani and wet river clay. It is not an oppressive heat, but a soft, living embrace that instantly slows the pulse and softens the edges of the day. The mechanical hum of the aircraft engines fades into the background, replaced by the organic chorus of a tropical night. Insects in the surrounding jungle weave a wall of sound that feels as solid and textured as the tarmac beneath my feet. Above, the sky is not merely black, but a deep, bruised indigo, heavy with clouds that promise rain, but hold their breath for now. I take a moment to let the new atmosphere settle on my skin, feeling the shift from the sterile, recycled air of the cabin to this rich, oxygen-heavy night. My boots find a steady rhythm on the polished floor of the arrival hall. It is a smaller space than the hubs I left behind, built with dark wood that absorbs the sound of travel rather than amplifying it. The sensation of movement becomes the only thing that matters. Left foot, right foot. The rubber soles of my shoes make a soft, squeaking contact with the tiles, a sound that repeats like a slow metronome. I adjust the strap of my bag on my shoulder. The weight is significant, a heavy anchor that pulls down against the trapezius muscle, but it feels good. It is a grounding pressure. It reminds me that I am here, physically present, carrying everything I need. I continue through the corridor. The lights overhead are dim, casting long, soft shadows that stretch out before me, and then tuck themselves away as I pass. There is a lull in the crowd, a gap between the rush of other passengers, leaving me in a pocket of solitude. The rhythm of walking takes over. There is no need to think about where to go or what comes next. There is only the sensation of the floor beneath my soles and the slight sway of the bag against my back. The hallway extends, a tunnel of beige and brown. I watch the patterns in the floor tiles pass by, one by one. A scuff mark here, a slight variation in color there. The visual input is simple and repetitive. It allows the mind to unspool. My breathing synchronizes with my steps. Inhale for 3 paces. Exhale for 3 paces. The air inside the terminal is cooler than the tarmac, conditioned and still. I pass a row of empty seats, their metal frames gleaming under the artificial light. No one sits there. They are merely shapes in the periphery. The floor transitions from tile to a thin, industrial carpet as I near the exit. The sound of my footsteps changes instantly, muffled and dull. The squeak is gone, replaced by a soft thudding that barely registers. The friction increases slightly underfoot, requiring a fraction more effort to lift each boot. But the momentum carries me forward. The bag feels heavier now, the strap digging in just enough to be noticeable, a constant reminder of gravity. I do not rush. queue for the exit is short. I stand still for a moment, shifting my weight from one leg to the other, feeling the muscles in my calves release their tension. The silence here is thick, punctuated only by the distant murmur of voices and the rhythmic thumping of a stamp hitting a passport page somewhere ahead. Thumpy, pause, thumpy. Passing through the final glass doors, the night air reclaims me. The transfer to the town is a blur of motion and shadow. I let the vehicle carry me through the darkness, watching the world slide by through the window. The road is quiet. Tall trees lean in from the sides, their leaves illuminated briefly by the headlights before vanishing back into the gloom. We pass low walls and gated driveways, the architecture shifting from modern utility to the sloping roofs and wooden shutters of the old town. The Mekong River is out there somewhere to the right, invisible in the dark, but its presence is felt in the coolness of the breeze that slips through the cracked window. The guest house is a sanctuary of teak and silence. I navigate the stairs, my hand sliding up the smooth, varnished railing. The wood feels cool and solid, worn smooth by decades of use. Inside the room, the air is still. I lower the bag to the floor, and the release of weight makes me feel light, almost floating. There is a large, four-poster bed in the center of the room, draped in a white mosquito net that hangs like mist. I do not turn on the main light, preferring the soft, amber glow of the bedside lamp. The floorboards creak gently as I move across the room, a comforting, domestic sound that speaks of age and history. I pull back the covers. The sheets are crisp and cool, smelling of laundry soap and sunshine. I settle into the mattress. It is firm, rising to meet my tired spine. The ceiling fan above begins to spin, a slow, hypnotic rotation that stirs the air without creating a draft. Round and round it goes, the blades blurring into a soft gray circle. My eyes trace the movement. The sounds of the jungle are muffled here, distant and rhythmic. The tension drains from my shoulders, sinking into the white cotton beneath me. I close my eyes, listening to the faint, rhythmic whoosh of the fan, letting the journey dissolve into the dark. The darkness here has a texture. It feels thick, almost like heavy velvet draped over the wooden shutters of the guest house. Inside the room, the air is still and warm. I lie on the cotton sheets, listening to the absolute silence of the house settling around me. There's no hum of traffic, no distant sirens, only the quiet breathing of the old building itself. Somewhere in the distance, the silence breaks. It is 4 a.m. A low, resonant boom travels through the humid air. It is the deep voice of the temple drum. It vibrates more than it sounds, a single heartbeat that signals the start of the ritual day for the monks. I wait for the second strike. It comes slow and deliberate, rolling over the rooftops of the historic quarter. It is a summons not for the rush of the day, but for presence. I slide the mosquito net aside, the fabric whispering against itself. My feet find the cool floorboards. At the door, the metal bolt feels cold against my thumb. I slide it back with a heavy click, the only sharp sound in a soft world. Stepping out, the humidity wraps around me immediately. It is a wet, earthy embrace that smells of river water and tropical flowers that bloom only at night. The street outside is empty. I begin to move down the narrow lane. The pavement is damp, likely from a rain that fell while I slept. My shoes make no sound against the wet stones. I pass a row of low houses. Their shutters are closed tight against the night. Wooden slats locked together to keep the morning out a little longer. There is no movement behind the glass, no light spilling from the cracks. I continue past a low wall covered in vines. The scent of wet earth rises up to meet me. One step follows another. The rhythm of walking takes over. Left foot, right foot, settling into a pace that matches the slow drift of the river nearby. The mist hangs low, swirling around my ankles as I move. It softens the edges of the buildings, turning sharp corners into curves and trees into vague, looming shapes. I do not rush. There is nowhere to be but here, moving through the gray light that precedes the sun. The road curves gently to the left. I follow the curve. A sleeping dog lifts its head as I pass, then lowers it again without a sound. The air is heavy with moisture, cooling my skin as I walk. I watch the way the shadows stretch and pool under the eaves of the houses. Everything is painted in shades of charcoal and indigo. The world is reduced to the sound of my own breath and the soft placement of my feet on the ground. Step, breathe, step. The repetition is calming. It clears the mind of any thought, leaving only the sensation of movement through the quiet, damp morning. I let my gaze rest on the cobblestones, counting the patterns without numbers, just observing the flow of the street as it unwinds beneath me. The walking leads me to a wider opening. Ahead, the silhouette of Wat Wisseneret rises against the lightening sky. It is the oldest operating temple in the city, and in this pre-dawn light, it feels its age. It is not gold and glittering like the images in travel books. It is heavy, ancient, and grounded. The main structure sits silently, a dark mountain of wood and stucco, but my attention is drawn to the stupa behind it. I approach the great hemispherical dome. People call it the watermelon stupa because of its rounded shape, distinct from the sharp spires of other temples. I step closer until the gray stone fills my vision. The years have turned the brick and plaster into a living landscape. I reach out. My fingertips brush against the surface of the boundary wall. It is not rough, but soft thick layer of velvet moss covers the base. It is cool and damp, holding the moisture of the night. I press my palm flat against it. The cold travels through my hand, grounding me to the earth. The texture is intricate. Thousands of tiny fibers of green life clinging to the ancient masonry. I stand there for a long time, my hand resting on the cool, mossy stone. The sky above begins to dilute, the deep indigo fading into a pale, washed-out violet. The shapes of the temple grounds become clearer, revealing the weathered details of the roof tiles and the gnarled roots of the frangipani trees. A rooster crows, distant and muffled by the heavy air. I do not move to leave. I simply lean against the low wall, watching the light slowly reclaim the garden from the shadows. The darkness does not break, it dilutes. At 5:45 in the morning, Sacaline Road is not yet a place of commerce or conversation, but a channel of gray suspended in the cool mist. The air holds a heaviness that presses softly against the skin, a damp weight carried up from the unseen river. I stand near the wall of a temple, keeping back into the shadows. There is no traffic. The only sound is the sweeping of a broom somewhere in the distance, bristles dragging over pavement, rhythmic and faint. Across the street, women kneel on woven mats. They are silent shapes in the gloom. Beside them sit bamboo baskets, the lids slightly askew to reveal the steam rising from freshly cooked sticky rice. The vapor twists into the cool air, vanishing before it reaches the height of the tamarind trees. Then the color arrives. It is not a sunrise, but a line of saffron moving through the gray. The monks approach in single file, a ribbon of orange robes glowing against the muted stone of the street. They walk barefoot. Their movement is fluid, a single entity unraveling down the road. There is no talking. The only audio is the soft shuffle of feet and the dull thud of sticky rice dropping into metal alms bowls. A woman lifts a pinch of rice, places it in the bowl, and lowers her head. The monk accepts it without a glance, replacing the lid and taking a single step forward. The line advances. It is a cycle of giving and receiving that occurs in a hush, so profound the rustle of a robe sounds loud. I let the procession drift past until the last robe fades into the mist near the end of the peninsula. The street remains quiet, though the kneeling figures begin to stand and gather their mats. I turn away from the main road, seeking the narrower veins of the town. A small alley opens up to my left, running down toward the Mekong. I step into it. The ground here is uneven, a patchwork of brick and poured concrete that has settled over decades. My pace slows to match the stillness of the morning. I place one foot on a flat stone, then the other on a patch of damp earth. The alley is narrow, flanked by garden walls that rise just above eye level. Ferns spill over the tops of the brickwork, their their fronds heavy with dew. I watch the way the moisture clings to the tips of the leaves, swelling until gravity pulls a single drop down to the path. One step, then another. The rhythm of walking takes over. There is nothing to analyze here, only the texture of the lane. To my right, a wall of whitewashed plaster shows the maps of time, peeling back to reveal the red clay beneath. To my left, a wooden fence darkened by rain guides me forward. The path curves gently. I follow the curve. The air is cooler in this corridor of stone and wood. It smells of wet moss and old rain. I focus on my breathing, syncing it with the fall of my boots. Inhale for 2 steps. Exhale for 2 steps. The world narrows down to this simple corridor. There are no signs, no voices, no distant engines, just the vertical lines of the walls and the horizontal stretch of the path. A cat sits on a gate post, watching me pass with slow, blinking eyes, but it does not move. I continue past it. The light is changing now, shifting from charcoal to a pale, washed-out blue, but the shadows in the alley remain deep. I walk through a patch of silence that feels physical, a soft insulation from the waking town. The repetition of movement settles my mind. Step, pause, step. The uneven bricks require a gentle attention, keeping me anchored in the immediate moment, preventing the mind from wandering beyond the next 3 feet of ground. The alley widens, spilling out into a small courtyard near the riverbank. Here, the morning light has found a way through the canopy. It illuminates a series of bamboo racks set out to catch the first warmth of the sun. I drift closer to inspect them. Stretched across the bamboo frames are sheets of dark green, almost black. It is kaipan, the river weed harvested from the bottom of the Mekong, flattened and set to dry. I lean in. The texture is intricate, like handmade paper. The weed is not a solid mass, but a lace of fibers, translucent in places where the sheet is thin. Embedded in the dark green surface are constellations of pale sesame seeds and thin slices of garlic. They look like jewels pressed into velvet. I can see the rough edges where the weed was pulled and pressed, the fibers interlocking to form a brittle, delicate sheet. The scent is briny and earthy, a concentrated memory of the river floor, mixing with the sharp aroma of the drying garlic. I watch as the sun climbs just high enough to touch the edge of the rack. The light passes through the thinnest parts of the weed, turning the dark green to a vibrant emerald for a fleeting second. Leaving the racks, I move toward the water. The river is a broad, flat sheet of copper, reflecting the brightening sky. A long-tail boat drifts in the current, its engine cut, the driver sitting motionless at the stern. The water laps against the muddy bank with a soft, slurping sound. I find a dry spot on a low stone wall and sit. The mist is lifting, revealing the green hills on the far bank, layer by layer. The town behind me is waking up, but here, at the edge of the water, the morning holds its breath a little longer. I watch the current pull a piece of driftwood downstream, turning it slowly until it disappears around the bend. Mist lifts slowly from the confluence of the rivers, revealing the swept earthen courtyards of the Golden City Temple. The air here holds a distinct weight, heavy with the lingering scent of incense burnt before dawn, and the moisture rising from the Mekong. Silence commands the space, not as an absence of sound, but as a physical presence that presses softly against the skin. The main sanctuary dominates the view, its tiered roof swooping low towards the ground like the wings of a bird protecting its nest. Gold stenciling glimmers against black lacquer, catching the first uncertain rays of the sun. I move toward the rear wall of the sim, drawn by the promise of the Tree of Life. Here, the morning light performs a slow, deliberate magic. The mosaic, set into a deep red background, begins to wake up. Hundreds of thousands of glass tiles form a shimmering forest of fable and memory. I trace the visual path of the branches, seeing how the green glass captures the light and throws it back as a cool, subterranean fire. A silver bird, pieced together from mirrored shards, flares with sudden brilliance as the sun clears the tree line. It is a landscape made of light, a rigid glass forest that seems to breathe as the angle of the sun shifts. Each fragment of colored mirror acts as a tiny prism, scattering violets and teals across the red stucco. Drifting away from the dazzling wall, I seek the dimmer confines of the red chapel nearby. The transition from the bright mosaic to this sheltered space is like stepping into cool water. Inside, the reclining Buddha rests in eternal repose. The wooden shutters are open just enough to allow narrow beams of dusty light to slice through the gloom. These beams do not illuminate the room so much as they emphasize the darkness. Shadows pool in the corners and drape over the shoulders of the statue. I watch the play of light on the bronze skin, seeing how the shadows lengthen and retreat with the movement of the clouds outside. It is a silent theater of grays and deep ochres, changing by the second, yet appearing entirely still. Leaving the temple grounds, the streets of the peninsula guide me toward the tributary. The Nam Khan River cuts a brown, sluggish path below the town, and spanning it is the historic pedestrian bridge. The structure is a skeleton of steel and timber, narrow and weathered, stretching across the water. I step onto the wooden planks. The rhythm of the crossing takes over immediately. My boots find the center of each slat, creating a hollow, percussive thud that resonates through the soles of my feet. The bridge is alive with small movements. It sways imperceptibly with the wind, a gentle lateral shift that requires a constant, subconscious adjustment of balance. Below, the water is a canvas of caffeolate swirls, moving steadily toward the Mekong. But I keep my gaze fixed on the timber path ahead. One step, the wood groans, a dry friction of fiber against rusted metal. 2 steps, a loose bolt rattles in its housing, a tiny metallic chirp that repeats with every second stride. 3 steps, the heat of the day is beginning to build, radiating off the steel handrails, which are already too warm to touch comfortably. There is no rush here. The bridge is long enough that the far bank seems to stay at a constant distance for minutes. I settle into the monotony of the sound. Thud, creak, thud, creak. It becomes a hypnotic loop, pushing away complex thoughts and leaving only the sensation of movement. The gaps between the planks offer fleeting glimpses of the river far below, rushing past in a blur of muddy brown. But the solid wood underfoot provides a rhythmic anchor. The air out here over the water is slightly cooler, carrying the smell of wet silt and river weed. My pace remains even, a metronome set to the slow pulse of the morning. I listen to the varying tones of the wood. Some planks are dense and silent. Others are thin and vocal, singing out under the weight. This auditory landscape is simple, comprised only of wind, water, and the mechanical complaint of the old bridge. It is a long, narrow tunnel of sensation, a suspension of time where the only objective is the next plank, the next step, the next breath. Gradually, the incline changes. The far bank rises to meet the bridge. The rhythm of the planks alters as the structure meets the solid earth of the other side. The hollow thud deepens, becoming duller, less resonant. I step off the timber and onto the dirt path that winds into the quiet green of the opposite shore. The noise of the bridge recedes, replaced by the rustle of bamboo groves that line the riverbank. I find a flat stone beneath the shade of a paper mulberry tree and settle there. Across the water, the town looks like a painting, still and distant. The sun is higher now, turning the river surface into a sheet of hammered copper. I watch the current fold around the pilings of the bridge I just crossed, the water parting and rejoining in an endless, seamless mend. The morning holds its breath, suspending the world in amber light, waiting for nothing at all.